poker, you're constantly faced with making decisions. Those decisions come on every hand of poker and on every round of betting. They include things like whether you want to call, whether you want to raise, whether you want to fold your hand and not play it. If you decide you want to bet, how much do you bet? These are the decisions that you're faced with consistently at the poker table. And as you know, poker is a game about making correct decisions. You make enough correct decisions, you're a winner. If you make poor decisions, you'll probably be a loser. Now, the first decision that you're going to be faced with on every hand that's dealt is, do you want to play the hand or not? You look at your first two cards and you say to yourself, do you want to play or don't you? Now, recognize that your decision may vary depending on what your opponents at the table do. In other words, if the guy in front of you moves all in, a hand you were thinking about playing, you now might switch your decision and decide to fold that hand. What you're looking for in the first two cards are high cards, essentially. Big cards, pairs, and preferably the bigger pair, the better. The best possible hand that you can start with is two aces. Those are called American Airlines, pocket rockets. It's the best starting hand that you can have in hold'em. It's what you're looking for. Let's have a look now at the strongest group of starting hands. We start with the two aces. The next strongest hand would be two kings. Then two queens. Then two jacks. And then probably an ace-king suited. That means that the ace and king are of the same suit, like the ace-king of spades. Then you have a pair of tens. And you have an ace-king unsuited, followed by an ace-queen suited, an ace-jack suited, and a king-queen suited. This is the group of starting hands that you would prefer to start out with. Now it's time to make another decision. Let's assume that you've decided to play your first two cards and you've called the first round of betting. Now we come to what we call the flop. It's where you place three community cards on the board, and your mission now is for your two down cards, your two cards, to sort of fit with the flop out there, to match up in some kind of way. Whether you make pairs, whether you make a straight draw, whether you make a flush, but in some kind of way to connect your two cards with the flop cards. Now let's look at an example here. Here we have four players with reasonable hands who would most likely play before the flop. Player one has an ace-king of spade, very strong starting hand. Player two has a 10-9 suited, it's what we call a suited connector. Player three has an ace-queen. And player four has a queen-jack suited. All of these hands are very reasonable starting hands. So let's assume that everybody played. We can see that right now the ace-king is the best hand. He's got the best hand. But let's go to the flop and see what happens. The flop has come 10-9, 8 of diamonds. Now notice that the ace-king of spade doesn't fit with this flop in any way, shape, or form. Just doesn't help him. Player two, on the other hand, who has a 10 and a 9, has flopped the top two pair. He has 10s and 9s. Player three has an ace-high flush draw in diamonds. He also has a queen, meaning if a jack came up, he would have a straight. So he's connected in the flop in that he has a nice drawing hand. Player four has a queen-jack suited. He has flopped a straight. He now has 8, 9, 10, jack, queen. So at this particular time, player four now has the best hand. But notice what happened. The guy who had the best hand now all of a sudden has the worst hand because of the flop. So connecting on the flop and thinking about the fit or fold policy will help you become a winner. Having favorable position in poker means that you have the advantage. You have the advantage for a couple reasons. The first is you get to act last on all the rounds of betting. The second is is that you have access to information that your opponents didn't have when it was their turn to bet. In real estate, we talk about location, location, location. In poker, we talk about position, position, position. Having position is the key to success at playing Hold'em poker. Now, the strongest position that you can have at the table is when you're the dealer. You have the dealer button because you get to act last on all rounds of betting. The weakest position is when you're in the blind positions. That's for two reasons. A, you have to put money into the pot before you even see your cards. And B, you have to act first on all the rounds of betting. After the blind positions, we have what we call early position, middle position, and late position. Let's go have a look at a PartyPoker.com table to demonstrate what we're talking about when we say early position, middle position, and late position. The early position are the two seats after the blinds. For example, seats 3 and 4. Middle positions is when you'd be seating in like seats 5, 6, and 7. And late position is when you're seating in seats 8, 9, and 10. So the closer you are back toward the button, the better off you're going to be when you're playing Hold'em poker. Learning to play position is the key to playing successful poker. Let me give you an example of why position is so significant when you're playing poker. Let's look at this hand. Here, the guy with 2 10s is in early position. He's in first position under the gun, as we say, but 2 10s are a very nice hand. So chances are he's going to at least call with these, maybe raise with the 2 10s. But notice right behind him, his first opponent has a pair of queens. Now this guy is going to re-raise him. The next player looks down and finds the ace, king of spades, another strong hand. He's either going to call or re-raise himself. And then look what happened. This player over here has picked up 2 aces. He is now going to move all in. So based on all this information, the guy in early position is now going to recognize that his 2 10s might not be the best hand anymore. So now he's going to throw his cards away. But he lost money in that pot. Now, just for illustration purposes, let's assume the guy was in great position on the button. He's sitting in last position now, and he has the 2 10s. The 2 queens, they're going to raise the pot just like they did before. The ace king is going to at least call or raise. The 2 aces are going to move all in. Now the guy with 2 10s, because he's had the advantage of gaining all this information that his opponents may have a stronger hand than him, is most likely just going to throw the 2 10s away. Because he was in favorable position here, he didn't lose any money in this pot. So you can see the difference. In one spot, when he was in early position, he lost money. When he was in late position, he didn't lose any money. That should illustrate the importance of position when playing Hold'em. One last thing I might advise you about position in poker is when you're in early position, you generally need a stronger starting hand than you do when you're in late position. The reason for that being is that everybody at the table hasn't done anything yet. You don't know what they have. So when you come into a pot in early position, you need a stronger hand because you don't know what anybody has. When you're in late position, if everybody's folded, you don't need quite as strong a hand to come into it because you're only up against the blind hands. In other words, you've only got 2 players to beat rather than 8. So that's a little tip for when you're playing position in Hold'em.